Hello, today we're going to be taking a look at the Segotep Phoenix computer case. This is an enthusiast grade computer case that does computer case things. No, let's get cracking. Okay. Let's take a look. So, some first impressions. Well, big surprise here. This case is tempered glass, both on the front and the back. Sorry, on the front and the side. Cool things is that this case is oriented rather than the typical, how do I say this, with the I/O shield in the back. The case now has instead the ports for the I/O and the expansion slots on the top, as well as the I/O shield. So you get basically the full ability to have fans on the front and the back as well, so you can have airflow flowing through the entire case while having the power supply and all the components vent hot air out the top, which actually looks really cool. Now, my only complaint, as a matter of fact, is that well, first off, I think this is a rather expensive case. It's like $150 or something. This is having no fans. This has literally no fans in it. Not that I can tell, at least off the bat. Plus, this front panel is got some metal in it, but also some cheap plastic, it feels like. So, yeah. Also, curious to see how difficult it is. Sorry, correction. How bad it is for me to get the screws off and take the front panel off. Yeah, look at this back panel. That's not something you see every day. I will give them credit where credit is due. It is a very unique design. So the panel has at least somewhat protection, plastic as it is, so that you can get into the case rather easy to get back on. And the screws stay in, so overall, USB-C, and a really, really intriguing design. Quite intriguing, actually, especially given the fact that I think this prioritizes airflow a lot better, except the graphics card, of course, might take up most of that space, but it does prioritize airflow a little bit better. Honestly, though, it takes advantage of convection and stuff. So yeah, overall, my only complaint is it doesn't have any fans, and some of this plastic stuff, especially for the, why do we have plastic in some of these places, and especially a very cheap feeling plastic, at least there. So yeah, that's my comment so far. Let's throw it together, throw a computer in there, and build a computer out of it, and see what we get. So I finished building out the PC in this case. And this case has been a very weird case in the sense that I have not built in this style or anything similar to this style in a while or anything unique. I guess this style, this format is very weird to me. But that being said, it was executed well. Having the motherboard rotated meant that obviously all the PCIe out or the PCIe or I expansion slots are all facing on the top. So that means like the power cord, make sure the power cord goes on the back here, which also makes for an interesting situation. But I was more like the HDMIs, the USBs are on the top here, which makes for a very interesting situation when you have a power cord down here and then a bunch of other cables coming out the top. I feel like maybe adding the power supply, moving that up there, would have also been kind of good, or at least making a wire that comes down so it's all in one place. It just makes for an interesting situation there. So comments. Number one, this is addressable ARGB lights on the front. Overall, no issues with them. They look kind of cool, I guess. Honestly, I'm not that much of a big fan of like the design on the front, but honestly, it's personal preference. I don't think it looks bad. I just don't like it in particularly. I think the solid, like, I don't know, tinted glass or a solid cloudy glass front would have been just as fine. The plastic on the front is kind of a big, I don't know, it's already getting scratched up from just putting it on the table and taking it off. I cleaned this table like 2 days ago, so plastic on the front is kind of tacky, is that the right word? Especially because there's a lot of this very cheap feeling plastic used almost everywhere. I think this case is $109. It doesn't come with a single fan. For me, having to throw in more fans, but fans are now like $15 a piece if you want something decent. That's going to be putting you back, if you need like at least 2 fans in here, that's going to be putting you back up to $140. And at that point, there are plenty of other good cases on the market that have great fans pre-included. So for me, I mean, what you're really paying for here is a unique design. And honestly, this cheap, feels like a lot of corners were cut to make this design work. I think that the design is useful, especially when it comes to airflow. Temps are great, but that of course requires fans. And that's not included in the case. So if we were to review what we just have here, then airflow is, I guess, there's no, like, you have all these perforation on the side, but you have no airflow through them. So, it's mediocre at best. It's got a lot of potential. It's just, it doesn't feel like the time was, I don't know, you need some fans in there. The fact that it was rotated was not a hindrance in design or building out the system. The cables reached everywhere where they needed to. Actually, in my opinion, they reached easier than they normally do. For me, I have some times where the power supply can't reach the cable up at the top for the CPU header. And this had no problem, obviously, with rotated design, but still, power supply had no problem reaching there much shorter distance. There was no really awkward situations regarding graphics cards. Everything fit really nicely and easily. Plenty of room, especially if you take out one of the dry bays to fit the power supply in there, especially if you have a long power supply. But overall, I don't have too much of an issue with anything other than just some of the build quality and the choice of the lack of fans. I think that's a big deal, especially when this case is, I think, was designed like this to focus on airflow. You're not going to even include any fans. I mean, every case I've reviewed for the last 2 years has had fans, some much cheaper than this. So it's just kind of interesting that they chose to skip out on the fans. So would I buy this? I mean, it depends if this is something you're looking for, something like this style, then I definitely could see that. The perks from that is, of course, just going to be airflow. And honestly, with a graphics card in there, that's going to also end up blocking a little bit of that airflow as well. Especially when you have that through flow, it's just going to run into the graphics card and then dissipate. And then hopefully you don't have a really thick graphics card that blocks up the whole case inside there. But for the most part, would I recommend it? It really depends if this design does it for you. You're paying for the design pretty much. And other than that, I really can't. Yeah, it depends on if you want the design. But like for me, personally, I'm not that big of a fan of this case, just because the plastic is kind of, it feels cheap, and the fact that it has no fans means that I'm gonna have to pay to get fans in here. It's a lot of work. The front panel isn't really that attractive to me, and the only way that you get the benefits of the airflow, of course, is just having to buy a bunch of fans. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Check out the channel for other cool tech related reviews, unboxings, etc. And you have a great day.